everyone, and welcome to this WFA chat session, which is a coffee break discussion. I'm Molly Theocaris, Head of Content for WFA, and I'm leading this session from sunny London today. I hope all of you watching have got your coffees at the ready. I hope you have your phones on silent and you're ready to think about yourselves and what we can do to improve the industry over the next 20 to 25 minutes or so. So as always, this is an informal session and we are live. So we would love for you to interact throughout. So what you should see to the right of your screen is a chat box. If you cannot see it, it could be minimized. And I'll be asking you to input at different times. So be prepared to put your drink down and type your thoughts and ideas in there. Do bear in mind, we have a 30-second or so delay, and also we are recording this session, but we will not refer to you by name when we're reading the comments. So today I have our guest speaker, Amy Wu, to discuss some issues over a coffee. Now, Amy is an award-winning journalist and filmmaker, and she has just published a book, From Farms to Incubators, Women Innovators Revolutionizing How Our Food is Grown. Now, this book profiles female innovators and leaders in the growing sector of agtech. So she is with us to tell us about her work and to offer her thoughts and advice on behaviors and characteristics that she's observed in true innovators in our sector. So hello, Amy. Thank you for being here today.
Hi, Ollie. Thank you very much for having me.
Great. So before we do a bit of a deep dive into this topic, can you start by just telling us a bit about yourself, your background, and how you came to write your book?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm so happy to be joining today. I'm joining, it looks like I'm joining from a greenhouse, although that is my background. I am joining from Hudson Valley, New York, which is about 100 miles north of New York City. I'm originally from New York. I'm a native of this area. I grew up in the suburbs. And a little bit about myself is that I don't come from an agricultural background, but I'm a voracious consumer of food. And when I was growing up, my father is a professor, and yeah, I just thought, I didn't know where food came from. I didn't think about it either. I actually thought that my vegetables and fruit and food came out of, like, was grown out of the aisles of the supermarket. But I love telling stories, and since I was young, I've been a journalist. I started in high school, and 20 plus years, I'm not going to give away my age, but I've been an investigative journalist for that many years. And I share a bit of that background because that is what led me to the story about women innovators in ag tech. And it started in 2015 when I got a phone call from an editor, part of the Gannett chain, who asked me if I wanted to go to Salinas, California. I had never been to Salinas Valley, California before. So Salinas is literally called the salad bowl of the world. And I later on found out why. It is because it's a $10 billion, agriculture is a $10 billion industry there. And 85% of the leafy greens that we eat here in the US are grown in the Salinas Valley. So when I was dropped into the Salinas Valley, everywhere I drove and turned were thousands upon thousands of acres of lettuce, vegetables. It was amazing. But what I did notice when I went to meetings, including trade conferences, is I did not see a lot of women leaders at the helm. And I certainly didn't see a lot of women like myself. So in 2016, after observing, I started to ask the question to people, everyone I met, including farmers, people in the industry. I said, do you know of any minority women entrepreneurs in ag tech? And I was faced with a lot of silence and people who didn't really seem to know what I was asking. So I repeated the question, and that is what led me to profile women founders in the ag tech area. So ag tech is also a fairly new sector. I mean, now it's catching on steam, but turn things about 6 years ago and nobody knew what ag tech was. And in the city of Salinas, you know, the government was talking about, let's grow the ag tech sector. So I learned that ag tech is the marriage of agriculture and technology. It is any innovation that's created to help growers grow more efficiently and productively, especially under the auspices of climate change. So that's a little bit about myself and kind of what led me to the story, a lot of it through observation and noticing where are the women's voices here, because women already play such a critical role and huge role in food. So I was like, why aren't there more women at the decision-making levels, whether it be on the farm or in the growing sectors of ag tech? And as we all know, agriculture and technology are two sectors where still very dominated by men. So I decided to amplify the women's voices and also look at it through the lens of both gender and sustainability.
I love that. It sounds like it's been really quite a journey. And I think, to be honest, I think a lot of us find ourselves falling into this industry. And once you're in, it's very hard to get out because we're such a fab industry to work in. But I think your comment on diversity is such a key one, and we're trying to support that more and more with WFA, but it's good to hear about projects like your book to really kind of try and drive this forward even more. Now, I do want to mention again at this stage, we're going to have some questions put to Amy at the end from you, our audience. So do post these in the chat box throughout, as we'd love to ask your questions. And also, if you have any thoughts on what's being discussed, any comments, put them in the chat box as well. We'd love to get your opinions. So I've got a question for you then. I want to go into detail to look at some of the content of your book. In your opinion, having worked in and reviewed this area for quite a while, are we seeing more women becoming innovators in the food and ag sector as time goes on?
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited to share that there are more and more women founders in this sector, and I'm excited about it. And I've been seeing this over the past couple of years, especially I think during the pandemic. I think some of it's been driven by the pandemic too, with this greater interest in food, like where our food is grown, who's growing it, where it comes from. And so a couple of things about more women in the sector is that it's interesting. I find that the women that I looked at, and there are 30 plus of them in the book, actually, they share a number of commonalities, but what I've noticed is that they come from a strong background in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. A lot of them tended to be younger also. It was really fascinating to me, in their 20s and early 30s. I mean, I don't want to put an age range to this, but the youngest woman that I looked at was a college student who launched as the CEO of the B Corps. I can talk more about Ellie Sims later on too. And also they had a strong desire to tackle big impact problems. So they come with creativity, innovation, skills. A lot of them had majored maybe in engineering and been in the biological sciences, but some of them had worked for big ag companies before, but they all wanted to hang their own shingle and say, I'm going to take my idea, my innovation, and I'm going to not only be a kick-ass entrepreneur, but I am going to tackle a big problem that growers face. Because as we all know, farmers face a lot of threats under climate change. So I think that's some of the commonality. And also I see a growing number of, I don't know if the word support is correct, but certainly resources for women that are encouraging women founders in ag tech. Over the course of the years, I've seen more accelerators, incubators, even venture capital firms and investors that are specifically looking for, scouting out for women founders in ag tech. Not simply looking at gender, but of course, like looking to see if they have an awesome product first. But in the second filter of it, saying, I want to support, I want more women in this industry. So why not look at some of the awesome entrepreneurs with great products? Thirdly, I'm seeing that more universities and colleges actually are starting ag tech programs, if not incorporating them into majors in colleges. I'm seeing competitions like, entrepreneurial competitions at the college level and even high school, encouraging youth and women to launch products or to think of solutions for growers. So this has happened over the past couple of years. And I wouldn't be surprised if we increasingly just see the landscape is we see more and more women in the landscape. And yet, Ollie, I think there's quite a few challenges still for women to be a part of the entire fabric of things. There's still a long ways to go, I think, also.
That's so positive, though, that we're seeing that movement already that's kind of taking us in the right direction. I think in our industry, and we kind of, I think this is in any industry, I think women are often viewed as quite risk averse when it comes to entrepreneurship. So I think to see more women really pushing themselves to drive change in our sector is so positive to hear. And the fact that they're being supported by, private groups, by universities, it's just fantastic and so
Well,
inspiring.
absolutely, you make a really good point that there's a number of barriers to cross here, because the women who I've encountered and talked to, and they've shared their stories, they face cultural barriers too, and not just the gender barrier of sort of like, when I first went out there hunting, quote unquote, hunting for women in this area for them to tell their stories, when I met some of them were like, well, I think I don't have much to share. This is what they would tell me. They were like, I really don't think we're there yet. We don't really have a story yet. We're just beginning. Versus when I would talk to men in the area, they would be like, let me get you my information and let me make sure that my story is there. I don't know if it was a confidence issue, but I would have to talk through those layers and be like, no, you have a really good story to tell, and I'd like to tell that story. Also, some of it is cultural. The women in the book, a lot of them come from our immigrant families. I'm thinking of, like, for example, Diane Wu, and of no relation to me, and Purnima Parameswaran from China and India. Like their families, they came from China and India. And it's known in the culture that, you're supposed to either be a doctor or engineer. Why are you there? The thought of starting something up and being an entrepreneur is certainly not in the fabric, I think, culturally, of certain areas too. And growing up, I can speak of that as well, in that you were expected to go into certain careers and professions, certainly not something that's high risk, which is what entrepreneurship is about. And certainly not in a new sector like agtech, where investors in the beginning were like, what is this about?
I think that's a really interesting point. And I think maybe that's why I'm so risk averse. Again, daughter of refugees and immigrants, it makes you think, oh yeah, it kind of instilled to you very early on.
Yeah.
Play safe, be successful, but don't do anything too risky. And I think now, and I think what you said about younger women is very interesting, because I do think the younger generation, they're growing up on TikTok and they're seeing things on Instagram that are really inspiring them to drive forward. So it doesn't surprise me, and I think it's quite nice to see that the younger generation are actually kind of taking the ball by the horns and going for it. I love that. I also wanted to speak a bit more then about the sort of innovations that you've encountered in your research and in your book that really excited you. Can you give us some insight into, I suppose, which technologies and which areas were really interesting to you?
Oh, it's so hard to just pick one. Maybe I could allude to several. I get really excited about talking about the innovation, though, because having spoken both with farmers and innovators, I know that farmers are hungry for all kinds of new things. So I'll mention a few. I get really excited by robotics and automation. And I'll go into that a little bit. Having visited some of the farms, they've really been impacted by climate change. This means that they have to change their crop plans. It means sometimes they get a bumper crop that they didn't expect. But who is picking this fruit? Who are picking the vegetables? The problem is that the field workers are aging out as well. I think the average age of the field workers are 60s and 70s. So when I think of robotics, I think of robots, literally, that are picking the fruits out in the fields. There's ones now that are actually able to pick certain sensitive fruits like berries, or cauliflower, that are sensitive to the touch. Thinking of self-driving tractors that I've seen out there, a little bit scary at first, but I've certainly seen them also work their magic on the field. So autonomous self-driving tractors. I also think there's a lot of opportunities in soil testing kits. that use gene sequencing technologies to look at pests, look at certain diseases and pests in the soil itself. Soil is actually much more complex and have a greater complexity of DNA than even human beings. So for farmers, they would love this data and information and analytics to see what part of their land, is more maybe more risk adverse, less risk adverse. I think of artificial intelligence that's used, AI that's used for all kinds of things, including analyzing the quality of food. And I think of, real data, just data. I get excited by data because like there's one company that I can think of, Ag Tools by Martha Montoya out of Salinas. And she basically gives people what gives farmers what is the Bloomberg to investors, what is to farmers. There's 600 different kind of categories of data, including transportation, politics, weather, that farmers just want, at a click of a button, and that she provides it to them across the country. So those are some areas. And when I think about innovation, I think about what is the problem they're solving. So I think about everything from food waste and labor shortage to just the decline of farmable lands, and also, like I said, data management as well. And that includes for cattle ranchers also.
I think it's really fascinating. We have got to, as an industry, feed a growing world. And I know there's so many concerns from people in all different parts of food and ag saying, okay, well, how are we going to do this without impacting things like animal welfare and quality and those sorts of things? And from the sounds of things, agtech is really going to give us all of those answers. We have to rely on that part of the industry and the great minds within it. I think
yes, I think I absolutely think so, because like you mentioned, Ollie, that growers are facing this issue that in 2050 there's going to be a bigger population. I think it's estimated to be like 10 billion by 2050, and yet at the same time the amount of land that's farmable is declining at the same time. So innovation also includes urban farming, I think, and different ways of farming. So hydroponics, or aquaponics, and just finding alternatives as to how we can grow the food. So I think it really encompasses quite a lot, and not just certainly for vegetables and for fruits, but we're also looking at meat as well down the road.
So it's a really exciting future. And let's speak about the female leaders that you've been kind of interviewing for your book that are doing really exciting things. What are some of the shared characteristics and skills that you've seen in these leaders and innovators that when you speak to them, that those, like me and others who are really aspiring to work and progress in our sector should be trying to emulate?
Well, I see numerous commonalities despite the diversity of their stories, and they have very diverse stories. In the book, I didn't want to just talk about their innovation and their business. I wanted to talk about them as people. So everything from where they grew up to what they wanted to be when they grew up to what their grandparents were doing. In fact, one of them was a cartoonist. I mentioned Martha. She was an award-winning cartoonist and a librarian before she got into agriculture. So I'm getting somewhere with sharing her story. One of the big themes that comes through is that a lot of them don't come from backgrounds in agriculture or in technology. And this is a little bit of a paradigm shift, because in the sectors of agriculture, traditionally, it's passed down from generation to generation. Like if you weren't born into a farming family, it's like, wow, can you actually be part of the sector? In the past, the answer was really no. But agtech has opened the doors for new opportunities for women. So I also see that they have a passion for changing the world, for the better through their technology. So the do good, do better, the sustainability filter, I see it there. And a passion and just real persistence on solving big problems, with impact. And they really want to create a community of like-minded people. This is what I've really found, that the women that I talk to, they want to connect with each other, and they want to connect with people who want to be a part of this, and they want to find ways to collaborate and work together. So I find that really encouraging, because like women working with women is the way to go with this. I feel like we need to work with each other in order for this to become like a real paradigm shift for change to be made. And I think also this desire to get away from corporate politics to a more merit-based environment. Because, as I noted, a lot of them had worked for big companies prior. And I don't want to call it a glass ceiling. I'll call it a grass ceiling.
Like that.
Maybe they've faced a grass ceiling and they found that they know that they have the intelligence and the creativity and the persistence to take it elsewhere. Right. So I think those are some of the commonalities. And I think that all of them are very, very encouraging. This is why I am more optimistic. I see the glass as being more half full than half empty when it comes to this particular sector. It also encompasses not just ag tech, but ag food tech, agri-food tech, and ag bio. And there are quite a lot of women in the biological sciences, and certainly in the food tech area, a tremendous amount of women, and not just women, like I said, women who are founding the companies and making the decisions, but also they're hiring amazing women too. Those women are the ones making the hiring decisions, and they're putting hopefully women on the boards too of their companies.
I think that's a really nice overview there. So definitely the passion, the collaboration, maybe a bit of desire to do things a bit differently as well. But I think businesses around the world are really changing, and the ones that seem to be doing the really exciting things are seeing, I suppose, are looking at things through a very different pair of glasses. It's a very different perspective on the world, and they're run in very different ways as well. So I think that's quite interesting.
Such an excellent point, Ollie. And I do want to put a disclaimer at the end of this, though, is that one of the big challenges, though, that remains is in getting the investment for the companies. I chose to focus on startup companies. So these are companies that are really young, at pretty early stages. They're still building their teams, getting funding, and building up the structure and the bones to grow up, basically. So like I said, there's still quite a number of hurdles when it comes to women founders getting that funding, but the positive is that there is more and more interest from investors in the sector. So I see a potential win-win on both sides.
That's really positive to hear. And I'd love actually at this point to get our audience's view on this too. Have you observed any skills or characteristics in great leaders or innovators that you can share with us? So put those in the chat box if you've got any ideas there. But Amy, I've got one more question for you. And we're running out of time very quickly, so you might have to keep this one a little bit brief. But based on what you've seen, what would be your advice to those who have an idea and are thinking of driving this forward and establishing their own startup?
Well, first of all, I would say that if you are that person out there, awesome. I'm so excited. This is such a great time to come in and to do this. Like I said, there's a great interest now in food, farming, ag tech. The wave is coming. Secondly, I would say that the exciting thing is there's a growing number of resources out there. There's accelerators, there's incubators. The exciting thing is that I and a few other women leaders in ag tech are actually have launched a directory, a searchable directory of women working in ag tech. I'm happy to make that available. That just launched a couple of months ago, and we did an article with Ag Funder. We're going to be extending that directory to a resource directory. So if you are interested, we would love for more people to share out that directory. You can search for people on that list. It's free, and you can connect with them. And I think almost every woman I've talked to in this sector would love to be a mentor and would love to share more. They would like to see more women in this area. I would also say, please reach out to some awesome, amazing organizations out there that are really supporting women in this field. Women Food and Agriculture is one of them. From farms to incubators, I'm happy to provide more, and I'm happy to connect. I love connecting women with other women, especially those passionate in the area. You don't need to have a background in agriculture. You don't need to have a background in entrepreneurship. You do need to have a passion for food and for making a difference, for changing the world, and for also and also a confidence that you have something to offer, which I'm sure that a lot of folks out there do. So I would say that there's a lot more resources than there were than a few years ago, and just don't be shy about reaching out. And also in the book, there are 30 women also. All of the women I've talked to are really hungry actually to be mentors. So feel free to connect with them as well.
Yeah, we've learned at WFA through our mentorship scheme how really important it is and how much both the mentors and the mentees get out of it. So absolutely, I think that's some really sound advice. Find yourself a mentor if you need one in the sector that you want to go in and get that advice. Right, I'm going to now go across to some of our questions, see what we've got. So we've got one here. You mentioned that many women in You mentioned that many women in STEM are getting involved in agtech. Are there any other disciplines that you're seeing that are necessary or critical to agtech? So hold on, are there any other disciplines that you're seeing that are necessary, or critical to join the agtech sector? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Wonderful. I think I noted a few times that you definitely don't need a background in agriculture to be an ag tech. So some of the other areas I would say off the top of my head that the ag tech sector is hungry for beyond STEM would be marketing and communications. If you can tell a good story and you can tell the story in creative ways, there's a lot of startups, a lot of companies who are hungry for that. I would say if you have a background in data analytics, sort of any of that area, ag tech's hungry for that because growers need that data and information. I would also say if you're a researcher and a scientist, even in the medical area, that this is that this sector would love to have you also, because there's a lot of need for the, like I said, research, science. And I'll give one example. Ag tech also includes seeds, also the seeds that we use to grow the food. One of the companies that I've been talking with, they are developing seeds that are more pest resistant, and they might need, for example, less water, so they're more grower friendly seeds. So how is that developed? There are cancer researchers as part of that team as well. So I'm just giving an example that you certainly don't need to have a background in agriculture and STEM. Math, if you're also good at math, if you're great at math, agriculture also is hungry for people like that.
There we go. Quite a broad range of skills there. I mean, I'm terrible at maths, but I'm sure there's plenty of you out there who are great at it. So do make sure you're getting involved. We have a post here from someone who has companies in their portfolio, which involves a number of female founders, and they're looking potentially for more, startups to invest in. So do look out for that in the chat if you want to get involved with that. And one more question. What do you think are the biggest barriers to change in the ag tech sector when it comes to inclusion?
When it comes to inclusion, some of the biggest barriers, I believe, start at the top potentially and start at the bottom, and I'll address that really quickly, is that traditionally, like I mentioned, agriculture and technology have been very, very male dominated, and there's a tradition that comes along with it, especially in agriculture. And I think the issue starts with the top, because like I mentioned, one example is women on boards who sit on the boards of ag tech companies, whether they be public companies or at startup level as well. That needs to slowly change. I think if we want a greater diversity of perspectives, which actually helps the product itself to have fresh perspectives, different perspectives, we need to take a look at who is sitting on the board of the companies. I think another barrier certainly has been investment as well. And traditionally, startup companies have been driven by venture that are venture backed. And there haven't been a lot of venture capitalists who are focused on ag tech in the past. Now we see that changing slowly as well, and we see the private investment also changing. There's even celebrities, like Oprah and Katy Perry, who are interested in ag tech also. That's very positive news. And I think another barrier is comes from maybe the lack of in the past a community, for women in agriculture and ag tech. So I see there's a real opportunity there to have either a digital community or an online or in-person community where women can connect with each other and can provide mentorship on one level, but also share knowledge and also see opportunities to work and collaborate together. I gave one example. The directory that we have out there was a collaboration of 5 different women we were all collecting our list of women in the industry and decided to pool our resources together. I see these as barriers, but I also see these as opportunities as well.
Fantastic. And I think what we'll do, if it's okay with you, is we'll send out a link to the directory in our next WFA monthly summary email, so everyone can access it if they choose to and have a little look at that. But we're very nearly out of time. In fact, we've gone over a little bit, but I don't want to, miss out on you reading us some of your book. So would you mind just reading us a short excerpt so we can get a bit of an impression about what you're covering within the book?
Absolutely. I'm going to read a little portion of the book, a bit of like an appetizer. It actually is the end of the book, the epilogue. The word in Chinese for crisis consists of the characters for danger and opportunity. The women innovators who have shared their stories with me saw an opportunity and took advantage of it. Some moved across the state or even across the country to pursue their vision. Upon reflection, though, this is not surprising. Many were already pioneers in their own right, the first from their family to receive their education in the US, the first to attain multiple higher degrees, the first to achieve key leadership roles at the companies or organizations where they had worked. It takes chutzpah to forge one's own path and to break past barriers, be they cultural or financial. Women and minorities have historically been underrepresented in both ag and tech industries. Now this new generation of startups led by minority women is seeking to solve agriculture's problems with tech innovation. Despite their diverse backgrounds and unique stories, the women shared numerous commonalities, including, but not limited to, the following: a passion for changing the world for the better through their technology, a passion to solve big problems with impact, a desire to give back and to create a community of like-minded people, a desire to get away from big corporate politics to a more merit-based environment and to be able to better execute their vision, a passion for creating something new and innovative that others have not done or been able to do. Simply put, they have taken the ball and run with it. The question now is whether investors and growers will welcome their innovations with an open mind. So that's a little appetizer.
I love that. I feel really inspired. I mean, it's been a great chat, but I particularly enjoyed that reading there. So thank you so much. And Amy, it's been a really enjoyable discussion today. So I really do want to thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Can you remind us of the name of the book? We've posted the link in the description, but just where people can find that as well.
Absolutely. The name of the book is From Farms to Incubators, Women Innovators Revolutionizing How Our Food is Grown, and it is just out.
There you go, hot off the press. So Amy, thank you for sharing your thoughts. I barely touched my coffee as always because I was so enthralled. So thank you for coming and joining us today. Thank you to everyone for watching as well who've tuned into the session today, and we will be having another coffee break session next month, so do join us if you can. Thanks again everyone, and we hope you have a good day.